FSElite at XO19 is proudly sponsored by Orbex. Find out more about them at the end of the video.
Hi everyone, and we are super pleased to be at XO19. It's Callum here, and I'm joined by Jordan. Hey Jordan.
Hello.
So, why are we here, Jordan?
So you were lucky enough to get a couple of press passes to the press day. So this is Thursday, to the Xbox event where there's some special guests on behalf of Microsoft Flight Simulator.
And of course, being a flight simulator website, there were plenty of games and stuff here to play, from like Forza, Gears, a couple of new announcements, but we've been spending most of our time at the flight sim booth, haven't we?
Yeah, I think they kind of expect us to roll around every kind of 20 minutes after a loop around the room.
Yeah, and I think they keep trying to test our landing skills, because I think they want us to be the best to land at Courchevel, and then we turn out to be probably the worst people there because we're trying so hard.
Yeah, there's certainly an added pressure on us, I guess experienced people in this realm, of not ballsing it up.
No, and so far neither of us have, except you did tell me not to film one of your landings because it wasn't particularly bad.
Yeah, it was not great.
So I obviously was really fortunate enough earlier this year to go to Seattle, which I know you're pulling a face right now and the viewers can't really see this, but you are looking at me with sheer disgust, which I think everyone else was on the team. So I've already had a lot of hands-on time with the simulator. So this is your first time. So what is your overall kind of impressions so far from what your experience?
Visually amazing. Just the sheer detail that the sim pulls through. We're trying exactly the same build as what you tried in Seattle. It just visually stunning, from weather to scenery to aircraft. It's just a really strong overall package. I was asking them about kind of the setup that they had. They weren't speaking about specific sort of PC requirements, but they were certainly open about that this is the full-on online version in 4K. So I was quite lucky to kind of have the unlocked version. Everyone else that visits over the next couple of days will only be able to try it for 10 minutes maximum, and only fly from kind of 3 specified airports, but I kind of got free realm and was managed to fly from quite a few.
So if you are coming at the weekend, the 3 airports that Jordan's talking about is so you can test your landing ability at Courchevel, which, if you don't know, has one of the steepest inclining runways in the world, and it's a very good way to kind of introduce you to the physics of the sim, because you have the mountainous terrain all kind of battering your aircraft left to right. The other experience is Naples, and that is purely a free roaming experience, and that, did you see it as well? That whole thing just looks stunning. The way that those buildings were populated, it looked very much like the Naples I've been to and explored, with their very tight streets, the red roofs, the lush greenery towards kind of the mountains and stuff, and the active volcano. Did you have a look at that, and what were your impressions?
So I think Naples is the only airport I didn't try.
What?
So, I'll just have to go back and try it.
We're only halfway through today, so there's still time for us to go back.
There's still at least 4 more rounds of this room that we can do, and then end up at the flight sim store. But from my experience, the kind of first thing I did was taking off from Seattle. So obviously it was probably the first place you started when you went to Seattle. But even the population of buildings and autogen and all that kind of stuff there was really impressive. From the cityscape that you can see in the distance to all the kind of suburbs of Renton and Boeing Field. They were missing a few 737 Maxes there on the ground.
Yeah, when I went, there were plenty there kind of, maybe, obviously it's coming out in 2020, so maybe they're just predicting that they're not going to be there by the time this sim comes out.
I think probably Boeing's fingers are probably crossed on that.
For sure. So you took off from Seattle, I imagine. Do you remember what aircraft it was?
It was the Cessna 172, but it had a G1000 kit.
Okay.
And on that point, the G1000 is the slickest G1000 I've experienced in a sim so far. Everything was clickable, even the ground terrain. It was all really seamless and it was really smooth. So I was really impressed with that as well.
So by smooth, do you mean kind of the refresh rate on the screen, the monitor itself, and the gauges and the dials and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So from what I've experienced previously, it's not quite been as fluid and as sort of smooth as in the real world. But yeah, this experience was, it was seamless.
So you mentioned the G1000s as well. And did you notice anything in terms of like how the cockpit would reflect light and stuff? Have you seen any of that effect yet?
Yeah, so it was only when we started to play around with weather and time of day, which both look stunning as well, I'm sure we'll get onto. When you can start to see reflections in the door windows of the G1000, and I was kind of keeping my eye on what that would look like and how quickly that refreshed. And it's so smooth, and I don't know if that's down to the way the flight simulator is built now, or is it down to pure hardware of the computers they were using. Again, it's one of those raises a question of hardware, which we both know that they're not willing to talk about just yet.
So I did ask, and this is not official numbers or anything like that. One of the developers I was speaking to says from his experience with the modest hardware he has, like, we have to remember this isn't hardware designed for PCs 5-6 years ago. This is a platform designed for 5-6 years in the future. So of course you're going to need some powerful stuff to kind of get in there. But he was still saying, even on his modest setup of kind of current stuff today, he's still getting 45-50 frames in 4K. So if you're getting those sort of frame rates in that resolution and the level of detail which we've seen from like the trailers and our hands-on footage and stuff, I don't think people with 1080p screens are going to really have that much of a struggle. I think a lot of it will come down to the amount of data you can also stream and the processing, and there's a lot of articles out there which kind of details that. But I was still quite impressed with that kind of technical stat as well. But obviously these guys are still refining it, they're still bug fixing, there's still a long way to go, which means it's not coming out until next year, and we're still in 2019. So, I mean, from what we played today, it was super smooth, super slick. But yeah, weather, I mean, that stuff, the way it can just transform is insane, like the speed, and then not just how it transforms, but the way it impacts the sim. I mean, did you try flying from like a clear skies day versus an overcast day? How did that affect kind of lighting from what you saw?
Yeah, I certainly did, and I actually I took off from London Heathrow, which is still not in the stages of development that Seattle is or Naples, but it certainly looks still impressive. On a cloudy day, much like today, good old London weather, it changes the whole dynamic of the sim. And actually, it makes it even more visually impressive to go from taking off overcast clouds, a bit of rain, and the rain is fantastic. Those effects, much like what we're, kind of seeing in some developers at the moment, but it's almost tenfold that. And the way that the water acts on a windshield or a windscreen is pretty cool. It's just like driving 100 miles an hour down the motorway. It's exactly the same as that. And then going through the cloud layers, your visibility really being stretched. And then coming out above one cloud layer, seeing some sort of sun rays poking through the clouds, and then going above that layer to pure blue sky. That transition is something that you can only really get from actually flying an aircraft at the moment. So that's, again, just another visual point where it exceeds everything we've got at the moment.
Yeah, and I think it's important to kind of, we talked a lot about visuals and stuff, because it is visually impressive. There's absolutely no escaping that. I think the other important element as a flight sim is how it feels to fly itself. So today's event was a little bit different from when I experienced it in Seattle, in that they had the honeycomb alpha flight controls here, which, just a small plug now, is we have a review online. I absolutely loved them. I thought they're fantastic. So from your first experience just flying it, how did it feel in terms of all the controls and stuff?
So I personally prefer flying X-Plane at the moment, and that's purely down to the way the aircraft feel in sim. I feel that you get an added extra, feedback loop from the particle system, and it's something that Microsoft have chosen for this simulator in respect of your environment affects the aircraft rather than an algorithm deciding what happens next. So the one thing you really feel is ground effect, not just on landing but takeoff as well.
Yeah.
So as you bring the nose up, it'll then push the tail further down, so you have to counteract that. And then you almost feel the lift. You almost feel like your chair's supposed to lift up when you actually do pull up from the runway. So certainly aerodynamically, it's a bit more advanced than definitely FSX of the last Microsoft realm.
I think that was one of the first things I noticed for sure. Was I can tell you exactly when I first really felt that change. Was never before in like a small aircraft, when I put down the flaps, I could feel the nose pitch so dramatically as what it did in that sim. I mean, I was coming in very smooth, and then I was doing about 80, 60 knots, something like that, and 5 degrees of flaps. And suddenly, my nose went. I was like, oh my god, I need to adjust this, because I'm so not used to that, because you just don't get that same sort of environmental feedback from like P3D, which is my primary sim. So to have that aerodynamic shift suddenly meant, oh man, I've got to adjust my controls. I have to pull back a little bit more on the sticks to kind of maintain the descent path that I wanted to. And yeah, it just feels a little bit more. I think it was mentioned a few weeks ago at the event, but it's not like it's on rails anymore. Like, it feels like I am an object in the sky, and the air is just kind of there, which is kind of what I guess you're talking about a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm actually, as you said, kind of reacting to the air around you. I've never spent so much time trying to trim an aircraft than I have done this morning. It adds a different workload to what you're trying to do, I think, when you're just trying to get from A to B, but you're having to really work for it, and I quite like that.
But then once you do get that trim, the air, obviously depending on the weather and stuff, is super smooth, and it feels nice, and then you can take in all that amazing kind of scenery that was on the ground and stuff. I mean, I still can't get it for Naples. I mean, I looked at that at dawn, dusk. I looked at that at dawn and dusk in the night, and it just felt realistic, which was really nice. So, moving away a little bit from the sim, obviously you met some of the developers as well today. What were they like? What were your impressions from kind of talking to them about this thing today?
Well, we personally got some nice things said about FSElite.
We did, yeah.
Lots of the developers, we're wearing FSElite t-shirts, and lots of the developers have just kind of thanked us for being part of the community, but also thanking us to have a platform where everyone else can air their concerns, their questions, that kind of thing. And actually, they admit that they spend a lot of time on our website reading the comments, and that's kind of a reach out to our readers and our viewers, that they're reaching out to our viewers and asking for really positive or criticisms if you have some reservations and something. Trying to get a good insight of what the community wants and needs. I think definitely speaking to a lot of people over the last couple of months since the announcement, one of their reservations has been, what about me? Are they trying to gamify, flight simulator again? And something that kept getting repeated to me personally, I think, was that these guys want to do the right thing by everyone. so I don't feel we're going to be left out, and that's I think is quite settling.
Yeah, and I felt a lot of passion from them today. I did not feel that passion from them in Seattle, but I think today was a little bit more relaxing for them, despite how big this event XO19 is and stuff. I mean, there's meant to be 2,000 people here later on, but I think in Seattle they were super worried. They invited a whole bunch of critical people to come along, who are going to come along and critique this product that they've been working on and never shown off before. And I think they feel a bit more confident now that the feedback has been pretty good. I mean, I love this. I love what I've tried so far. Still loads to do, but they seem a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more open, and I think that for me is going to help drive their passion. And we interviewed them earlier, and again, like you said, they are listening to feedback. I mean, I remember a few months ago when they posted on their blog about, I'm an AbSim user, am I being listened to? And they very directly kind of responded to that. And I think it's true. I think they are reading not just FSElite, but I think they're reading, loads of different sites to try and gauge what's going to be best for the sim and for simmers. So I think that's equally important, and they all seem, again, very into aviation as well. I mean, they're all doing like flying lessons and stuff as well, and they're all talking about their experiences, and I always thought that was quite interesting because they're actually putting that direct feedback from flying instructors into the programming and stuff that they're doing for this sim.
Yeah, I also feel like that means that they're now even more invested into making this a simulator rather than a game. It's certainly positive that they've taken those steps. They could have easily just gone, well, let's just crack out a game and leave it at that. But actually, they're talking about what do we need to get this, make this release a really good release from the outset. But then also what's the stage 2? What's stage 3?
Yeah.
What is it that we want to kick out first and then develop going forward? And I think that's really important as well. Knowing it's not just a one-time thing. It's not just a one-time release. It's an ongoing project, and that's really positive.
And they were saying earlier as well, like they've already started the discussions about what's next. I mean, obviously the release is the tech alpha and then beta and then whatever comes, but then they're thinking a little bit further into like 2021. So let me just check the time. Let's just pause it there. Lost where we were. That's fine. So
2021. And then you're
Oh yeah.
else, I can't remember.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to just touch on with you is third parties. I mean, we still haven't really had any confirmation of like any third party development. I know we had PMDG the other day and to say the NG3 is coming to the new Microsoft Flight Sim, which was a bit surprising. I think it surprised Microsoft a little bit as well, based on what we were speaking to them about earlier.
Yeah, there were certainly some faces that made me smile at least. Just kind of. I suppose it's a good thing for Microsoft, and it's a nice thing that that these big third-party developers, not just a couple of guys in a home suite. This is PMDG, one of the biggest ones for P3D at the moment. It must be really positive to know that they have the support from that.
Yeah, and I think what made that kind of announcement as big of a deal as it is, I believe personally that within this industry there are key players who produce high-level quality content that have built up a reputation of producing that, and also along with that a following. I really think PMDG are one of those developers, and I think the minute PMDG or any other of those kind of top tier who produce a lot of stuff say we are developing for this sim, then I think that's when things start to really follow through, and that's when people are going to get excited. And I think right now we don't know what's happening. I mean, we've had developers say, yeah, we're interested. We've had people say, we're not going to make this just yet because we're still evaluating to see what this new sim's going to do, but we've not had any like real positive confirmation other than the NG3, which that alone is pretty damn exciting as well. So they're still not really talking about much, which I guess doesn't concern me because they're fully aware of it. They know it's out there. It's not like they're surprised for asking the questions. I just don't think they're ready yet to really talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, these things always take time, and I think every time I see a new piece of content from these guys, it makes me smile, and it just makes me almost a little impatient. And I get the same thing with, lots. We just want it all in one place to experience it all at the same time. Where, I think we just need to let it grow naturally and not kind of, put too much pressure on timings.
Yeah.
It is what it is. We do have to wait, but it will be worth the wait from what I've experienced anyway. And to match what I've experienced this morning with the likes of PMDG and other really great developers is only going to be a good thing, and it will be worth the wait.
Yeah, and that's again another key message that they were saying all day, wasn't it? VR we want to do, but again we want to get it right. Seasons we want to do, but we want to get it right. And actually they made a really good point earlier on Seasons during our interview, which not sure which order this will all be published, but they said, yeah, we can make things look orange or white depending on the season or like the time of year, but could we then go even further and add things like the way the birds then all flock during seasons and stuff? I mean, they made a really good point. Apparently in Bordeaux it's a big deal. So when they're doing flying lessons and stuff, suddenly birds are a big issue they need to watch out for. And I guess as simmers, that's something we've never really considered because, well, if the ground looks white or like orangey, then that's obviously the different season, but actually there's a lot of environmental stuff that goes on as well. And I think we've seen in previous trailers things like animals and stuff running around in the wilderness. I mean, I wonder if that's going to have some impact. I don't know. They were very, I think a simmer's interpretation of a season is purely a visual representation, but actually there's a lot of environment that actually does impact how simulator pilot, real world pilots have to consider. I mean, there's icing, flocks of birds, they mentioned forest fires as well. I mean, again, all these little things could then help to create those like mission-based stuff as well, which I think would be, it's not the core experience, but it's just added to it as well.
Yeah, speaking of those things, is normally, like you said, it's not something we consider because I don't know if we really think about it too much, but it's nice to know that someone has kind of thought about these things and just, I guess, what is the end point? Yeah. How far can you develop this thing? We were saying, one of the developers I was speaking to was kind of, 2020 is only 365 days long. If we keep, making such recommendations or, all these things like animals and forest fires and all this kind of stuff, where do you stop?
Yeah.
The list becomes so long, and it goes to 10 years and we still haven't found anything. So I think what their priority is to kind of find out exactly what it is that they want to release first, and then build on that, like we, as we just said a moment ago.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's a case of, like you said, there's going to be from what we've experienced, a very good core simulation product, and it will be a test of time to implement and add all these features. And we shouldn't forget, just because Microsoft may not have implemented something doesn't mean that there isn't going to be doors open for third parties to develop as well. I mean, they were saying they'd spoken to 60 or so developers. They're still in constant communication with them. So just because something doesn't exist on day one doesn't mean it won't ever exist. I mean, look at FSX, look at X-Plane. Those platforms didn't just arrive with all the stuff. It took years and years for all that stuff to kind of slowly be added and integrated and stuff. So, I think that's what's most exciting, is there's still going to be a road for third parties, and there's still going to be a really good base sim for us to kind of add all this cool functionality to this new world.
Yeah, and I suppose one of the nicest things is that it sets the bar already at that level. So anything that a third-party developer would do is to add to that, and actually it can only make something that's already good even better, and that is really exciting. I guess my top takeaway from actually seeing the sim was the user interface.
Yeah.
Regardless of all the lovely things that I guess maybe we take for granted in the simulator, it took X-Plane long enough to release their updated user interface, and we all know what that was like beforehand. But it's done wonders for that simulator.
Yeah.
And for Microsoft to pull that UI out of the bag, to kind of just describe it to our listeners, if you were to search for somewhere to fly from on a certain continent, or you wanted somewhere relatively close, you literally just bring up the world map, a bit like Google Maps, and click on an airport which you want to depart at or arrive at. It's really simplistic, really easy, but visually, it kind of matches the nicety of the sim as well.
Yeah, that was something I tried to convey in my article back in September, but it's so hard to convey how a UI in words, because we're not today we're not allowed to take pictures of it, which is a shame, but it's understandable. It's still being worked on, but it's there. It does exist. It's not like this facade or anything but it is a really nice UI. And some of the cooler features I also enjoyed was you didn't have to pick an airport. You could pick a point of interest, so like the Statue of Liberty, or there's hundreds of them scattered around, and you just pick it. You say, I want to be at 500 feet, 1,000 feet, whatever, and you will start the sim experience there, and that saves you having to to fly from JFK all the way over to the Statue of Liberty, for example. And I don't know if you clicked on any of the menus, but there's a lot of kind of filters and stuff. So you could filter down like the weather, you could filter down if you want to fly in rainy airports, live traffic. There's a lot of stuff you could do which we couldn't experiment with today, but the fact that they're in that kind of menu system would suggest there's going to be a lot of inclusion in the base package.
Yeah, we were talking about sort of certain settings as well. Going back to kind of the hardware kind of spec, depending on your internet speeds, there is an offline mode that you can fly offline.
Yeah.
It won't be as detailed as the streamable one, but there's also sort of the settings and features that we use today in our respective simulators, where you can tone down the autogen, you can tone down the weather effects, from what I understand, and it kind of does enable you to use not the most hardware intensive sim, which is really positive. But the customizability of either where you start or how the sim looks is always nice.
Yeah.
And to have a bit more control over that, I think will be good as well.
And this goes back to what we were saying earlier. I mean, as long as this scales to future hardware, then great. And that was the problem we always faced with FSX and to a lesser extent P3D, is it just didn't scale. I mean, Microsoft at the time, or Asus Studios at the time, thought that processors were going to become more and more powerful. Well, they have become more powerful, but their speeds would become more and more increased. And actually it was the GPU that kind of took over, and there was more cores. So hopefully this is going to be more effective at kind of being ready for the future in 2, 3, 4 years down the line. So the last thing I kind of really want to talk about is a very brief sneak peek we saw earlier of the Boeing 747-8. I mean, that we haven't seen it in motion. We literally saw just like a picture, but by the time you guys listen to this, you've already seen this in motion, so you're going to be more wowed than probably we are right now. But they also spoke about they have partnerships with Boeing, Airbus, Cessna, and a few other people. So, what were your kind of thoughts on seeing that and hearing all that news as well?
Well, I imagine to develop a really study level, if you like, we like to use that term, I guess. To develop an aircraft like that, you need access.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to have access unless you are a pilot or you own one.
Yeah.
Now, the guys are very lucky. They're based in France. They've got access to Airbus. Very lucky. extremely lucky to get access to Boeing, and also is it Textron and the Cessna and Beechcraft guys.
Yeah, I believe so.
And Cirrus, and that only makes things more valid because it's in Boeing's best interest. So, you know, the guys that are developing this make a really real life Boeing 747-8, and it's in Microsoft's interest to develop that as well. So it's only going to mean good things for the consumer and the flight sims.
And I don't want to be quoted on this. I may have misheard, but I think they said that was going to be included in the base game, base sim. Oh god, that upset a few people when that comes out, which like staggers me. I mean, we don't know about the level of detail or the in-depth system stuff, but if it's anything like the aircraft we're flying today, those are pretty detailed for default airplanes. I mean, I'm sure there are third parties out there who could do a job that kind of meets a different type of audience, but just for playing around with it for a few hours today, it certainly was significantly better than anything default we've seen before.
Yeah, for sure. And that only just reinforces the fact that they're doing this for sinners and makes it a bit more accessible as well to people that might not have a really intense setup or just might be really new to flight sim.
Yeah.
And that's what we want, isn't it? To grow our community. And I think with this, they're making it a bit more accessible to someone that might be a little bit interested in flying, that doesn't want to spend, you know, lots and lots of money on hardware or software to get involved with this, to really kind of open that door. And that's I'm quite jealous of the people that are getting into this now, rather than sort of me nearly 20 years ago having to really scrimp and save and sort of really just to get something quite decent.
And I think when they were talking about this coming to Xbox Game Pass, like for me that is also exciting because suddenly you've got millions of people out there who don't have to pay anything more than what they pay already for their Forza, Gears, whatever they're playing, because now suddenly this brand new title's added. And they go, oh, this is going to be kind of interesting. And yeah, they may only fly over their house once or twice in this sim and then call it a day. But again, that ease of entry for all these new people, like you're saying, is now super easy. I mean, there's no reason to not try it if you already have Game Pass. And that, as our community, is amazing because suddenly we've got all these new people who may not have an interest in aviation or simulation, suddenly might kind of develop this interest for it, which for third parties is amazing because that means more people to try and promote your products to. For us as a media website, it's amazing because it means we can grow our community, and for Microsoft it's great because it means they can get more and more feedback and then, you know, bring this title to maybe even things that we as simmers never even considered.
Yeah, and I suppose as end users of these things, the bigger we are, the more responsive developers and others will be to exactly what we want and need out of simulators. And I think, you know, power in numbers is that their game. And from what we heard this morning, it will be available from the Game Pass from day one.
Yeah.
So from release, you've got it, and it'll be that whatever the charge is for Game Pass.
I think it's $10, which, if you think of I don't know, I think they said earlier there's 35 titles for Game Pass, or maybe there's 35 coming, something like that.
I think you said 35 coming for within the next year.
Wow,
for Game Pass, which is incredible, right?
So you're paying like 30, like that's insane value. And I know there are people out there who are skeptical of this being a subscription-based thing, and I guess you could say that it's a subscription-based thing, but ultimately, I mean, you're paying $10 a month for like unlimited access to like hundreds of titles, and like not just indie titles, which, you know, are always valued maybe a little bit less than your usual AAA title, but like you've got Gears 5, you've got Forza, all these games on display here are coming to Xbox Games Pass, so that's incredible value. That's like $120 a year. I mean, we pay more than that on like one aircraft sometimes.
Yeah. I certainly spend more than that on coffee in a day. So it's definitely
Explains your shakes.
yeah, it's definitely. I mean, seeing the sim today is worth every penny. I think to get that, and also the other way around. So I'm not a big console gamer, but it'll also kind of open that door to console gaming for other people, and and that's quite fun as well. I mean, we're sat just opposite the new Star Wars Jedi game, which I'm looking quite interested in too.
So that's basically you hinting, let's wrap this little podcast up so we can go and play Star Wars Force.
Let's go play some games.
Let's go play some games. Before we do, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Nothing, just if you've got any tips on how to be less impatient and curb my excitement for the new sim.
Sadly not. But hopefully the TAC Alpha will come out, and hopefully those who are invited will continue to provide that feedback. That was something else Microsoft were very kind of keen to make sure was happening. But yeah, I think that's as much as we're going to be able to cover today. So thanks for listening, watching, whatever platform you may be listening to this on. And if there's any other content from XO19, then be sure to check it out on FSElite.net. But for now, see you later.
Bye-bye.
FSElite at XO19 is proudly sponsored by Orbex. Orbex are one of the leading scenery developers for FSX, P3D, and X-Plane 11. Their upcoming release, True Earth US Northern California, will feature Northern California like you've never seen it before in a world of X-Plane. Over 212 kilometers of hand-corrected, cleaned aerial imagery makes perfect flights for those VFR explorers. Millions of individual autogen trees, shrubs, grouped by type and hand-corrected for maximum realism, and there are over 970 custom PBR points of interest for you to go and explore, including San Francisco's beautiful Golden Gate Bridge, Silicon Valley, and much more. True Earth US Northern California is just one of many of hundreds of products from the Orbex collection. You can find out everything you need to know at orbexdirect.com.